So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or any time that you are watching this tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to program the game Pacquiao Invaders. Basically, it's Space Invaders, but it has a theme of the boxer Manny Pacquiao. So first, here is the gameplay. So now that we have seen the gameplay, I'll show you how to code the game. And forgive me if I suddenly talk in a different language, which is Tagalog. So, paumanhin mga manonood, paumanhin. So first, so una nating gagawin pag sa Pygame, to type import Pygame. So basically it is a set of Python modules designed for writing video games. So kahit anong laro na gagawin nyo, code or program pagdating sa Python, maglalagay lagi tayo ng import Pygame. Tapos, pwede rin natin lagyan ng Pygame, import asterisk. And then, import sys resist. So it is responsible for providing access to some variables used or maintained by the Python interpreter into functions that interact strongly with the interpreter. So lahat ng gagawan sa interpreter, so anything from the interpreter, import sys is responsible for that. Next is from OS path, import abs path or absolute path and their name or directory name. So this one provides functions for manipulating file system paths. So kumbaga yung instead na itatype mo yung buong file path, pwede nang irekta dito as long as yung mga files mo ay nasa isang folder. And finally, we have from random import choice. This one is very self-explanatory because this allows us to make random selections, well, user input random selections. Next, so to utilize the ABS path, their name or absolute path and their directory name, we're going to do this code. So type in base path for the variable, and then we're going to use ABS path or absolute path, directory name, directory name inside, and finally we type in file. So kahit anong gawin mo, natin fonts, images, and sounds na gagamitin natin, hindi automatic siya na nire-read at na manipulate para magamit sa code. So dito, tulad ng sabi ko, we're going to use fonts, images, and sounds. So to do that, let us type in this variable font path equals base path plus quotations fonts. Oh, no, quotations, two slashes, and within that are fonts. So basically the name of the file folder you have within the folders. So kung yung file mo ay nasa fonts, type mo lang fonts. So copy paste lang natin to. So pag gamit natin ay sa images, palitan lang natin to, images, and then type in images. So naayos na yung images. Matik nang nare-read at naayos na yung absolute path at directory name mga images. And finally sa sound, ganun lang rin. Change the variable path and change the name of the file folder. So basically, to recap, what the base path does, it sets the variable to the absolute path of the directory containing the current Python script. And as for the font path, images, and sound, these variables are set to specific directories relative to the base path. So naayos na natin yun. Next, let us set the colors. And for this game, we have white, green, yellow, blue, purple, and red. So to do that, we should type in white. If we're going to use white, so we type in white equals within the parentheses. It should always be in the form or in order, which is RGB. So basic numbers. 0 being the least amount of red, green, and blue, and 255 for the maximum amount of red, green, and blue. So for white, we have 255, 255, and 255. For green, we have red 78, green 255, and no blue. Remember, you can still use green, just 0255 and 0 here, but and within this context of the game, we're going to use this kind of green. And for that, it shouldn't be 0, but instead it should be 87 blue. Next is yellow, 241 red, 255 green, and no blue. Blue, well, we need red 80, green 255, and blue 239. Then purple, we have 203, 0, 255. And finally for red, we have 237, 28, and 36. So that is how to declare or we're going to utilize the colors. Next, we're going to set the screen with this type of code, which is screen equals display dot set underscore mode, and within that are two parentheses. So first, we're going to set the width, the screen width, which is 800 pixels or 800, and the screen height being 600. Next, we're going to use font, even though we did use the font path already. Here, we're going to set a variable for font. Basically, we're going to use a specific file for the font. So we're going to type in font path, and instead of declaring or typing in the whole file path, we're simply going to use it within a variable. That's why we have face path, font path, and image path. And sound path thinks the from.os path, which is this one. So let's continue for the fonts. We only need, so we have font equals font path plus the file that we're going to use, which is space invaders dot pdf. Now, in order to use the images for the game, we have, let us type in img names. Then we're going to type in all of the names for the images. So, kumbaga, kaya siya ginagawa bilang image names, kumbaga, instead na tatawagin mo siya sa file path o yung buong file path, dito sa image names, pwede natin iset o i-ready yung mga pictures. Yung simpleng pagtawag lang sa pangalan nila instead na yung buong file path. Yun. So we have ship, mystery. Next is enemy 1, and then the same with enemy 2 underscore 2. So basically, all of the files that we're going to use for this game, we just simply type it in, specifically the pictures for now. So we have 2, 3, yeah, 2, 2, and 3, 2. Then we have explosion, blue. Oops, hold on. Not only we have blue, we also have green and purple. Green and purple. And finally, we have lasers. Laser and the enemy laser. Well, how is the program going to read the files if we just simply type the names? And it won't magically appear. You have to type in a certain syntax or code syntax to read and load the images. And that's what we're going to do with this next variable. So we type in images, curly bracket, name was image.load, and then we have the image path plus quotations curly.png. And from this point on, you can clearly see where I'm going with. So anything that is within a PNG file, it automatically reads and loads the images to the game. Not only that, we have to type in format, within that is name, and then after that, convert alpha, let's go down here and type in for name in image names. And that's basically it. That's how it's going to read the game. Oh, no, no, not the game. Read the images from the file folders. And finally, last one is we're going to set the blockers, or as we've seen from the gameplay, the shields, the four shields in front of the ship or your character that you're using. So we're going to type in blockers, blockers underscore position. It's going to set it for 450. Basically, that is the Y coordinate position of the blockers or shields. And then we have enemy default position. Position set it to 65. So basically, that is the initial vertical position of the enemies for new game. And enemy move down. Going to set it for 35. So basically, for that, it is the amount of downward movement for the enemies when they reach the edge of the screen. Just like what we saw earlier. So check the cursor on the screen. The enemies start from this part, from the left side, leftmost part of the screen, and then it inches towards the right screen. So now, when it reaches the end of the screen, it moves down. Now it inches and then proceeds to go down, left to right, down, left, right to left, down, left, right, until it reaches its final destination or its objective to shoot you. Next, we're finally going to code the game, or not just the game, but the sprites, the entities that we see in the game. And the first one is the ship, which is the entity or sprite that you're using. So let's type in class ship, and within the parentheses is sprite with a lowercase s dot sprite with an uppercase s, and then the two dots. Below that is def init, which is initialize. I'm going to type in sprite dot sprite, oops, sprite, then init, oops, init, and within that is self, down is self dot image, then call the images, and then call the ship. Next is self rect, or the position of the ship, then self image, oops, then oops, image dot get underscore rect. Within that is top left equals parenthesis 375 and 540. And then finally self speed equals 5. Reason why we have self speed is basically um, the amount of pixels it moves every time you press left or right. And finally, we have for the def or methods, we have update. And within that, it's not just self, we also have keys, arguments, and below that are two if conditions, which are keys, k underscore left, which is the left arrow button you see on the keyboard. Then type in end self rect x, basically on the x-axis, which is the horizontal one. And then less than 10 below self rect x is minus equals self speed. And finally, we have keys bracket k right and self dot rect dot x is greater than 740, and the result is self rect dot x plus equals self speed. The reason why we have let it be minus equals and plus equals to the subspeed is reason why we put it in minus is to type in left, because as we see in the y-axis, for the y-axis, this is, let's say this is the 0 or the middle. Minus or negative means this part, which is the left side, and the right side are the positive numbers. And reason why we have equals that equals to subspeed basically literally is the speed. We're going to slow down speed. We're going left, and then we're adding, then we're going right. And not just that, we also have game stream dot lit. Within that, self image self rec. And that is how you set the ship. And just for a quick recap, for the ship, it represents the player's ship, which is the whole class. Then for the def or method, it initializes the ship sprite with its image, position, and speed. And finally, for update, it updates the ship's position based on keyboard input, which is the keys for left and right movements. And also, as you've seen, there is a error, but let's not focus that for now. So we have the ship done. Next is the bullet, which is task bullet, then sprite, that sprite, two dots, dash in it, it initializes it, then sprite, dot sprite, oops, wrong one, two sprite, dot in it, self, within it, excuse me, self, and then self image equals images, using that as file name, or we can type, or we have lasers, down that is self rect, it's equals to self dot image get rect, and then using that is again top left equals x position and y position. Next, we're going to type in self dot speed and then direction, then self dot side, and finally self filing. And finally, let's not forget depth, which is the update. Self keys and arguments. The stream lit, even that is self dot image self dot rect, and then self rect y, which is the y-axis, plus minus oops plus minus self speed, then multiplied by the self direction. Then an if statement, which is if self rect y is less than 15, or self rect y is more or greater than 600, the result is that it kills itself. And reason why we have bullet init and update is the bullet represents the bullets fired by the player or enemies, as we should know. And then init, it initializes the bullet sprite with its image, position, speed, direction, and side. And finally, update, it updates the bullet's position and checks if it has gone off screen to remove it. Hence, kill. Next in line is the enemies. So type in enemy, and as usual, we have sprite, then def, initialize, and not just cells, we also have row and a column. Oops. Within that, or within it, once again, sprite, init, init, self, and then we have row, column, oops, column, self, image, yes, self, index is going to set it to 0, self, image, self, images, um, self, index. And then finally, we have self, rect, the position, self, image, dot get rect. And then next we have def toggle images or image. So basically this method or def gives out gives up a sort of animation to it. Every time it moves, it shows another frame or image, and then it moves. Then we have, and let's say, oh, not one. We have index, which is plus minus one, and its statement being self-index, um, less than length, or the length of the self images. Then it shows the index being 0. And finally, self-image, self-images, the bracket within it is the index. Next is going to be the update, which is just simply 2 lines. And we're not going to use this much. We're only going to use self and arguments. Within that is the game screen blip. Within that again is the image and the self-rec. Finally, we have load images. And self. The reason why we have that is, again, it loads the images with its name. So we have images, and then curly bracket, 0 is the first one to show, 2 dots, and then brackets. So oops, we have 1 underscore 1, 2, and then underscore 1, 1, and then comma. So we're going to do this four times, and there you have it. We have set the images, and now to load the images, let's type in image 1 and image 2, two variables, then images, enemy, curly brace.png. Just like earlier, this is responsible for loading up the images. Then, not just, we also don't need to type in .png, just enemy. Now, dot format, oops, format image num or img num, then curly bracket, close curly bracket for image num in images. Hold on. Images self row. And below that is self images append. So append means, from what I know, it adds. Let's say it's usually used in a list data structure, and when you use append, it means add to the list. So it's like a transform scale, oops, scale dot no parenthesis image 1, then parenthesis 40, 35. We're going to do the same, but with image 2. So yeah, automatically reads as is that. And a quick recap, as we can see, the enemy, it represents the individual enemies. The init initializes the enemy sprite with its rows, columns, images, and initial position. And then toggle images, like I said, it changes the enemy's image to create an animation. Update updates the enemy's position on the screen. And finally, load images, self-explanatory. It loads the images for different enemy types and stores them within the image list. Images list. Next, we're not just going to type in or represent the enemy, we're also going to represent the group, which is enemy group. And with that, we have sprite. Once again, no, not sprite, but group. Then we have the initialize or init, not just self, it also has columns and rows, plural. And within it is the sprite group, the init, and you have self, just like how we always do. Then we have self enemies equals 2 pairs of brackets. Within the second bracket is type in none. Outside type in multiplied by columns for underscore in range equals to rows. Then next are the columns. Also, don't get confused by the last one, the last class, rows and image. For the last part, we have row and column. Now, since it's a group, go plural. It's now plural. Columns, rows. And then finally, self rows equals rows. So the enemy group represents a group of enemy sprites, and in it initializes the group with a 2D list representing enemy positions. But wait, that is not all. Okay, and next, going to type in self the left add move, set it to 0. We're going to do the same with the right one. And then we have move time, which is 600, the direction by 1, and then the right moves by 30, and then same with the left, and then move number, set it to 15, and then let us set the timer, which is time get ticks, parenthesis, and then the bottom, if I can type correctly, gain enemy position plus, two parentheses, rows minus 1 is multiplied by 45, which is added by 35, which is 35. And then self underscore alive columns, which is list, then range, and within range are the columns, plural. And then do the same one with left alive, set it to 0, but for right alive, we're not going to set it to 0, we're going to set it to the columns minus 1. So let me explain some parts of this whole code. Oh, and forgive me, it's not just enemy group, it's enemies. Let me check. Yeah, enemies group. So enemies group. So for enemies group, again, this class, oh, enemies group. So since we've updated it, not simply just from the rows, we've added left add move up until the left alive column. Right alive, excuse me. With that, we just added some additional attributes to manage enemy movements and positions. First is the left and right add move, which gives out an additional movement added to the left and right. Move time, these are the time intervals between enemy movements. Direction is the current direction of the enemy movement. 1, positive 1, or just 1 is for right, and minus 1 or negative 1 is for the left. Then right moves and left moves. These are the number of moves allowed to the right and left. Move number is the current move number within the move cycle. Timer, it controls the enemy movements. The bottom is the y-coordinate position of the bottom row of enemies. Alive columns is the list of columns that contain the living enemies. And finally, the left and right alive column are the index of the leftmost and rightmost alive columns. And also, let us not forget the update. So for the update, we have self and the current time. And an if condition, a nested if condition actually, which is if the current time is minus the self timer, and is less than the move time, is equates to if direction is equal to 1, that equates to the maximum move or max move, the self left, wait, no, the right moves added to the self right add move, sorry, add move. And also it's the same one with the left, but it's in an else form. So, oops, just fix that. And also this one. So let's move for the left. Oh my god, I'm bad at typing. Right to, oops, the left add move. And then next to that, now, where were we? And like I said earlier, it updates the enemy group's movements based on the current time. It checks if it's time to move the enemies. It calculates the maximum allowed moves. And if the move number exceeds the maximum, it changes the direction, moves down, and otherwise it moves horizontally. Also, if the direction of right, or 1, each enemy's X position is incremented by 10 pixels. And if the direction is left, or -1, each enemy's X position, or the horizontal position or direction, is decremented by 10 pixels. Basically, it inches and inches, it moves. And finally, the depth update increments the move number after moving the enemies. And if enemies reach the rightmost left edge, it increases the moves allowed in both directions. And it sets the move amounts for left and right. The depth update also changes the enemy movement. And finally, it resets the move number and increment the bottom position to move enemies down. So basically, the depth update provides the basic functionality for enemy movement, you know, and that's pretty much on depth update. And after the depth update, we have depth add internal. And then we're going to type in these two and that. Also another S and that. So def add internal within the parameters is self and apostrophe sprite. Under it has the super enemies group self, oops, and self sub, and then past it has add internal, which has the parameters of sprites, oops, sprites. And then it's before S in sprites equates to the self enemies, um, enemies bracket, then self the row. Another bracket contains the column, if I can type correctly, columns, no, just column, sorry, column, it equates to S. Then for the remove internal, simply copy it, oops, copy, type in remove internal. The only changes is that we're typing in remove instead of add, and it kills. Self kills the S, which S, and then below that is self update, which update the speed. Next method is column, then, and trust me, hear me out, just let me cook. Okay. Next, for the parameters, we have self and column. Below that is return, not any of self enemies, and then the row and the column. And below that is for row in range, and within range are rows. Hold on, I think I made an error. Okay, got right. So if you indent a lot, big indent, Next is def random button that only has self in it. If len or length self, wait no, sorry, it's actually forgive me. Color column choice and self like what we had earlier. Alive columns, oops, alive columns. What is that there? Call enemies, column enemies, with self enemies bracket row minus one in the column. Oh no, sorry, just call. Next is that is for row in oops, row in range with self rows then 0 1 no sorry negative 1 and finally return next double parenthesis and for in oops so for and in all enemies if n is not none oops then also none and then another update but update speed like I said earlier from here that update speed using that again self which has if then self is equals to 1 then the move time is set to be 200 and else if or if self you can just copy it is not equal to 1 but instead it's not fully equal to 1 instead should be greater than equal to 10 then the self move time is now by 400 and finally for the last def or method is kill which has the self and enemy parameters. Here we have self enemies and bracket which has enemy dot row. Also have the enemy column is equal to none. And we have is column dead. We're going to use it. We're going to call is equal to self dot is column dead. Then parenthesis enemy dot column. Oops. Enemy dot column. And if is enemy column dead, then the self underscore alive, hold on, self alive columns is removed with the enemy column. And next is that another if condition which has the enemy column is equal, sorry, fully equal to the self underscore right alive column. Then we're gonna have a while loop, which is self dot right alive column. Sorry, I typed it wrong. Sorry, I got it wrong too here. Oh, it should be S. Alive columns. Column here, right? The life column is less than 0 and is column dead, then self underscore right alive column hold on, weird, column is minus 1, then the right admin plus equals 5, and is column dead is equals to self is column dead by self plus the right alive column. After that is another else if, which is, let's just copy it, and the column is going to be on the right side, oh no, sorry, the left side, then has to be plus, and then left, also here, and also here. And let's not forget the right hand leaf. Now we have that, and now let me explain every purpose of it. So for the add internal, it overrides the add internal method of the sprite group class to add sprites to the group and update the internal representation of the enemies. He is responsible for that. Remove internal, it removes sprites from the group and updates the internal representation accordingly. Just like add internal, but it literally just removes it without an ending. And then is column dead, it checks this one. It checks if a column of enemies is dead or no enemies left. Oh, no, not random bottom to bottom. Random enemy bottom. It returns a random enemy from the bottom row of alive enemies. And then update speed. It updates the movement speed of enemies based on the number of remaining enemies in the group. And finally kill. It removes an enemy from the group, updating the internal representation and adjust movement parameters if necessary. Next, we are going to code the blockers or the shields that we see in the game, which is we're going to type class blocker sprite which sprite which has again the initialize and then not just self, we also have size, color, um, row, and color singular. Then we're going to type it again, the sprite as usual, the initialize self. Then I'm typing the height, which is the size, the width, which is also the size. We also have color, oops, that's the color, and then oops, and then the self image is the surface, which um has self width and self oops, sorry, height, and below that is also another self image, which has a field, which is self dot color, there's another L, like usual, and it's self rect, which says self image get rect, nothing inside. And then finally the usual row and column. We also have f update per usual, but we only use these three ones again. So only needs game, stream, lit, and the self image and oops, image and self rect as per usual. And let me explain all these ones. So for the class blocker represents the blockers on the screen that protects the player or the ship from enemy bullets. For the init or initialize, it initializes the blocker with the specified size, color, row, and column. It also creates a surface with the specified color to represent the blocker, which is obviously this, and then it sets the blocker position on the screen based on its row and column, and also the update, it updates the blocker on the screen by bleeding its image to the game screen. So bleeding means like erasing. So whenever it gets hit, it depletes a block or a pixel of it. This class, it defines the behavior and appearance of the blockers in the game. Blockers act as the obstacles that the player can use recover against enemy attacks, as they are essential for providing strategic elements in the gameplay, adding complexity and challenge to the player's experience. And that is the blocker class. And next is the mystery, or the red enemy that randomly shows up during the gameplay. So let us type in class mystery sprite as per usual. Oops. Sprite, and then init or initialize, okay, default in itself, again sprite, not sprite, once more, then initialize with just self. And then we have self images, image, and then we have the big boy images, then mystery, and then once more we have self image, transform dot scale, then we have self image, another parenthesis, we have 75, then 35, then self rect, then self image get rect. Then we have, once again, top left, we create equals to negative 80 and 45. Next to that, in the row, let's set it to 5. The move time to 2500, 25,000, 25K, then the direction, set it to 1, the timer, time get ticks, and then self mystery entered, and then this plays the sound, and then I think sound have plus it was the mystery entered that log. Then below that, once again, self mystery, oops, sorry, misspelled it first time, entered, set volume by 0.3, and finally self dot play sound is true. Below that again, update. Then we have self keys current time. This one is different. We had the old one used to be this or the other one. Now it's this. Big T. Current time and arguments. Then the set timer is false or set to false. Past is current time minus the self timer. And then we have an if condition, which has passed less than the self move time, which has nested ifs, which says if self rect x or the x-axis is less than 0, or self rect x is greater than 800, and self sound. In return, or not return, in exchange, it has self mystery entered, not play, just play. And also self play sound is now false. Another if statement, so just let's just copy that because I'm lazy. So also self at x, and then 840. So self at x is less than the 840. Oh, and the self direction. Actually, just write it down. Self direction is equal to 1. What we'll get is the self mystery entered fade out. It fades out by 4,000. And the self rect x is plus minus 2. And also being screen lit as, again, the self image and the self rect. Finally, the third and last if statement in nested if, yeah, let's also copy it. One difference being that it's this equation. So if self-rect x is greater than negative 100, if negative 100, then self-direction is negative 1, it still has the self-mystery ended that fade out, but now self-rect x is minus and equal to 2, and also the game screen lit. Outside of the nested if, we have another if condition class self-rect x is greater than 830. That means the self play sound is true. And the direction is set to 1 or the negative 1. And the reset timer is now true. And then let's copy another one. This time it's less than negative 90. Again, still play sound is true. The direction is now positive 1, and the reset timer is true. And finally, if past is greater than self move time and reset timer, we get the self timer equals the current time. Now, with that, we have coded or programmed the mystery. So for a quick explanation, for the class mystery, it represents the mystery ship that appears sporadically during the game, providing the player with a chance to earn bonus points. Or as we can see, it's Mayweather. And then for the init, it, it initializes the mystery ship with its image, size, initial position, movement parameters, and sound effects. It also loads the mystery ship image, which is this one, and scales it to the desired size. It sets the initial position of the mystery ship off screen to the left. It defines the row, which is 5, where the mystery ship appears. It also sets the time interval for the mystery ship's movement, which is 25,000 milliseconds, 25 seconds, and also initializes variables for movement direction, timer, and sound effects. Finally, on the update here, it updates the mystery ship's position on the screen based on the current time and movement parameters. It also checks the time for the mystery ship to move. It plays the sound effect when the mystery ship enters the screen area for the first time during a cycle. It moves the mystery ship horizontally based on its direction. It also fades out the sound effect after a certain time if the mystery ship is still on the screen, and it resets the timer and direction, this part, if the mystery ship moves beyond screen boundaries. So the mystery ship adds an element of surprise and challenge to the game, as players must react quickly to shoot it down and earn extra points. Next is the enemy explosion. So as per usual, class enemy explosion, and then sprite dot sprite def initialize And then not just self, also have enemy and groups. Then we have a super, which has enemy explosion and self alongside and initialize groups. Then finally, the image transform scale. We have self.get image enemy row. Um, then set it by 40 by 35. And let's do the same one to this one, number two. Oops, there we go. Then the only difference is just added 10 more, which is 45. Then self rec is self image get rec. Then top left enemy rec x and also y. After that, there's the timer. So timer is 9.get fixed. Next, we're going to update it. So current time and then arguments. And then we're going to use past, which is current time. Oop, yeah, that current time. And self.timer, which we're going to use an if condition, past less than or equal to 200 or 400, which is less than past, which is less than or equal to 600, which equates with self-text draw game screen, yeah, just green screen. And then in the list, what else is 600 less than past, and that just. And I almost forgot we need to have get image before the update. Get image which has row in it, not sub row. That has image colors equals to normal bracket of purple, blue, and blue again, and then green and green. And finally, we'll return the images, which is which are the exclusion, format, um, image, colors, and red. And yeah, that's the get image. Then we'll get the update, and then we'll go to the other explosions or the death animations. For this one, it's class mystery explosion. So yeah, that's right. As usual. Actually, let's just copy this part and change the name to mystery. Pretty much the same thing. The only difference is that it has mystery and four. Same as groups. Change the name from the super self init groups self text text. Let's change the whole thing with text font 20 string score score and white. Also, let's give it that mystery rec x plus 20, and then also rec y but plus 6. Let's leave it down here. Then finally, just the self timer. We also have an update, which is just the same as the enemy explosion. And then we have this class ship to explode, or the ship that you control to ship explosion in it. But instead of missile score, we only have ship. Then super ship explosion itself in it still groups, but you can get the image again, or images, with insane, and then the images for the fluid, get the ship, then self-red, uh, self-red, self-image, get red, and within it is the ship red X, and the ship red Y, and the usual self-timer, 9, 10, 6. And the update is just a little bit different. Let's copy this, and then self-current time. We also have pass equals current time, self-timer. One difference is we have if 300 is less than pass, which is less than or equal to 600, then the game is being blitzed. This blitz, and self dot image and self dot rec as usual. And then else if it's 900, and then it kills. So yeah, that is all of the ones for this part of the section we use the death animation or explosion. So first, in the enemy explosion, this one, it represents the explosion animation when an enemy is destroyed. For the init, it initializes the explosion animation with the appropriate image based on the enemy's role. It also defines two images, this one, two images for the explosion animation at different scales. It also sets the initial position of the explosion to match the position of the destroyed enemy around here. And get image, this one. Oh, wait, forgot. Also, this part, it starts a timer to control the duration of the explosion animation. Then for get image, it is a static method to get the explosion image based on the enemy's role. And then the update for enemy explosion, it updates the enemy explosion animation based on the current time. It blitzes the first image of the explosion for duration, short duration, blitzes the second image of the explosion for a slightly longer duration, and finally kills the explosion sprite after the animation is complete. Next is the mystery explosion. This one. Again, it represents the explosion animation when the mystery ship is destroyed. And it's the same as the previous one for enemy explosion, and it's on the ship is the same one for the enemy explosion. Next is the class life. So again, let's type in class life, then sprite dot sprite. Below that is initialize, and then within the parameters are self x position and y position. Then we have sprite dot sprite once again, and then initialize self. Then let's get the ship image with the self.image equals images and type in ship. Next is self.image equals okay, equals transform dot scale self.image comma parenthesis. Then we have 23 and 23. And then below that is the update, which has self and arguments. And we're only going to put screen dot blip. And as usual, we always put in the image and direct. And below that is text, which is a class. Class text. Then we have not a sprite, but an object. Then we go to initialize as per usual. Then in the parameters, we have oops, self, text, font, size, message, color, and X position, Y position. Then we're going to type in self font equals to font with a small f and then font with a big F and type in text, font, and size. Next, we're going to type in the surface, which has self.font.render, and the inside is message, true, oops, true with a big T, and then color. And finally, we have self-rect, self-surface, oops, and get rect. And within the get rect, we have top left equals and the X and Y plus or position. Then below the init or initialize, we have draw, which has self and surface. And within that is kind of like the game screen, but we're using surface to blit. And we have self surface and self rect. And next to that is a new class, which is space invaders, which has object. Then we're going to type in initialize as per usual. And within it is just self. Then we're going to add mixer.pre init. And within that are these numbers 44 100, negative 16, 1, and 40 96, which is, as you can see, frequency, channels, and buffer. Then initialize, then clock, time, dot clock, then the caption, then display dot set the caption space invaders. But since we're using the theme of Manny Pacman Pacquiao or boxing, we're simply gonna put Pacquiao invaders. This is the title of the window or the game. Next to that is self screen, and then we're just gonna set it to screen, which is the variable we set previously or in the topmost part. And then self background, then image load, which is image path, or images path plus background.jpg or any picture that you want to use as your background. And then we convert it. Then the next, we'll start the game with false, or set it to false, and then the main screen to true, and then with the self.game over to false. Well, obviously, the reason why we have self.start game in false because when you boot up or run the code, you don't want to like, immediately play it. It has to show like a sort of main menu or show you what game you're playing before you can actually play the game. And obviously for game over, you haven't even played the game. And you also haven't lost. So that's the reason why we have the game over to false. Then next below that is enemy position, which is set to the enemy default position. And then title, text, which has text, and then within it is font 50 And the message has Pacquiao Invaders in white and 164 and 155. These are the coordinates of the position. And then we're going to do the same thing for the title text 2. Simply going to change the size to 25. Then type in press any key to continue. And then still white, but the positions are now 201 and 225. And then the game over text, oops, don't mind that. Game over text, which has text, font, let's actually just do this, actually does that, font, then let's actually just copy this part because it's just the same thing. So for the game over text, we have font in the size of 50. It says, obviously, game over. Still in white, in 250 and 270. And then next is the enemy text with the text fonts being 25, then with a couple of spaces, then 10 points in green, and 240 and 270. Oh, I almost forgot, sorry. Also have, before the enemy text, we have the next round text, which has size 50, says next round, still in white, which has 240 and 270. And pardon me for the enemy text, it's not 240, 270, it's supposed to be 368 and 270. Let's copy that because we're going to do it for 4 times. For enemy text 2, we have also 25 with 20 points in blue with 368 and 320. Do it again. For the third enemy text, we have 30 purple with 368 and 370. And next, for the mystery one, we have points in red, oops, red in 368 and weed 420. Next to that is the score text, which has a text font in the size of 20. It says, has a message of score, still in white, but the positions are both 5. Then do it again for the live text in a size 20. Then says here live. Oh, sorry, in white. Also here in white in a size 640. Oh, not size, in a position of 640 and 5. Let's actually just put some space here, just so we can easily understand. Oh, I forgot to see here. And then let's continue. May tricycle, may motor. And finally, let's go with self life 1, which has life. Within it is 7, 1, 5, and 3, which are the positions. And then we're going to do it again for 3 times. So we have 2, in 742, and then in live tree we have 769. Then finally, self lives group, we have sprite the group itself live 1, Scotland 2, and 3. Oops, 3. And not just that, we also have the depth of reset, which is self, and score. It has player, as the ship method, and then the uh, player group, which has the sprite group itself, the player. It also has the explosions group, with the sprite dot group. It's actually just copy. Nah, never. It's not copy. And finally, not finally, next is the bullets. Then the sprite group, and then the self mystery ship as the mystery method. Copy that. We have the self mystery oops, group, it having a sprite group of self mystery ship. It's really wrong. I typed it wrong. Mystery ship. And then next, we have the self enemy bullets, which has sprite group of nothing. And then self make enemies, which is a method. And then self all sprites, which has a sprite group of self player enemies. Oh, wait, let's copy that. Enemies lives group and the mystery ship. Oh, ship, not group. And then we have the self keys, which has key that get pressed. Oops. So basically, the keys on your keyboard. So whenever it gets pressed. Then below those are the self timer, which is time, get, ticks, the note timer has time that get ticks too. And also, let's just copy that. And instead of the note timer, we have a shift timer. And below that is the score. Sorry, I had too much typing here. And then create audio. And then self make uh, new ship, which is false because you already have a ship and you don't need to make a new ship since you're already controlling a ship or your protagonist or your entity that you're using. And then below that is ship alive to set to true. Then we have a new method which is make, not just make underscore blockers, which has self and number. And then we're gonna type in blocker group, and then with the sprite loop, nothing. Then let's get a for loop, which has row in range of 4, and then another one, which has a for column in range of 9, and that equates to a blocker that no equals to blocker of sand green row column. So basically that sets the position of the blocker, not just the position, um, the attributes of the blocker, then This is where you're going to set the blockers with direct y, oh no, x. Then we have 50 plus parenthesis, oops, 200 multiplied by number added to this difference of column and blocker width. Then below blocker rect x, we have the blocker rect y, which has the blocker's position added to the product of row blocker height. And then finally, we're going to add blocker group dot add, actually no, just that blocker group dot add, which has blocker. And then we finally add a return to blocker group. Then below that is the method of create audio, which is this one. Then self, which has self sounds, curly brackets, for sound name in uh, uh, call or set or list the sounds, which has the shoot two, invader killed. Oh, I don't know why it does that. Um, oh, okay. I see why. All right. Then we have mystery killed, and finally ship explosion and close it off. Then two dots, and in it is the self sounds bracket sound name is equal to mixer sound, and in it has the sound path at with I think quotations, not quotations, but apostrophes with dot wav format of sound name. So basically, like we did earlier with the images and the fonts, we simply created an audio method to get the audio. And below this one is also self sounds, also has the sound name in the bracket, but it has, you can set the volume to 0.2. Then below that is the self music notes, which has the bracket of mixer sound, then sound path added to curly bracket dot wav in the format of I. Let's see, hold on. Sorry about that. Oh, sorry. Not supposed to use this kind of format. Just sorry. Then hold on. We're gonna add 4 I in range of 4. And next to that, or below that, is also another 4 sound in self in self dot music notes from earlier, which has sound set volume of 0.5. Then we're going to add a note index set to 0, The next we're gonna do a method which is play main music, which is self current time, this kind of current time, which has if current time is minus to self note timer, oh, timer is less than the self enemies dot move time, oh, small m, which give us a self note equals self music notes. After that is a bracket, self index. And in turn is a nested if else, which has if self note index is less on index is less than 3, then the self note index is added and equal to 1, or else the self note index is at 0. Then below we're gonna add the self note play, and then a self note timer added and equal to self enemies move time in that. Then we get another method which has should exit, then EVT, for those who don't know, that the EVT has return EVT type equating to quit, or parentheses within it is EVT type equals to key up and EVT key for the key or keyboard of escape. The next, we're gonna have a check input method, which has self, and self keys equals to key dot get pressed, not get, the key dot get pressed dot stroke. Then for E, an event dot get, which has an nested if self should exit to E, which shows a system exit. And then another if E type is supposed to key down to a nested if of E key of space. Then another if len, or length of self bullets equals to, oh, leads to 0. We can self dot shift alive, alive. Then another if is a self score of 1,000, less than 1,000. Then the bullet, then and bullet method a self player rec dot x added to 23. Okay, let's copy this, change it to y, added to 5, to -1, and below is 15 laser or the bullet, and center. Center. Next to that is self bullets, add bullet, and itself bullets dot add a bullet and then self all sprites add self bullets, and then we have self sounds bracket shoot and play, or else, and let's type in left bullet and copy this bullet, which has 8 plus 5 is that, minus 1, 15 laser, and left. Let's do the same thing, but with the right bullet and right, plus 38. So the left bullet has self.playerect.x plus 8, and then the y has 5, minus 1, 15, laser left, or the right bullet has rectx plus 8, rect-y plus 5, minus 1, 15, laser, and right. It has self bullets, add left bullet, so we'll copy that, go to the right, then self all sprites dot add self bullets. Then you add the sound, you can shoot 2 and play. And then for now, let's add to make enemies. Enemies of enemies group, which has 10 and 5, which is the columns and rows of 4 row in range of 5, and also a column in the range of 10, enemy of enemy row column, and then enemy rect x 157 added to the product of column and 50. Then the y itself enemy position added to the product of row 45. And then we'll add the enemy. And finally, self enemies is enemies. And for now, let's do a recap of all of the classes and methods that we've coded, starting with the life class here. Life class, it represents the player's lives displayed on the screen. And the method in it, it initializes the life sprite with his ship. And then the method of init, it initializes the life sprite with the ship image scaled to a smaller size. And then the life class also sets the position of the life sprite on the screen, which is this part. And it updates here. It draws the life sprite on the screen. Next is the text class, which represents the text objects for displaying messages on the screen. With the method init, it initializes a text object with a specified font, size, message, color, and position. It also renders the text surface with the specified parameters. It also has draw, which draws the text surface on the specified surface. Then the class Space Invaders, which represents the main game controller, as it initializes the game window clock. It initializes the game window clock. Then next for the class of Space Invaders, it represents the main game controller, which init initializes the game window, clock, and various game elements. Here's the clock, here is the game window, and then the various game elements. It also manages the game state variables such as the start game, the main screen, and the game over. It also initializes the text objects, which is here, text objects for displaying the titles, the score, the lives, and the rest of the text. It also initializes the player live sprites, this part, and the reset method. It resets the game state with a specified score, as it also initializes the player's ship, the bullets, the explosions, the mystery ship, enemy bullets, and all of the sprites. It also creates a sprite groups for managing group objects, or no, managing the game objects, as we see here. It also initializes the timers, scores, audio, and other variables in this part, and it also sets the initial game state. Then the make blockers method, this one, it generates and returns a sprite group containing blocker objects, and the blockers are obstacles in the game that protect the player from enemy bullets, like I've said earlier. We also have the create audio, which initializes the game's audio elements, such as the sounds for shooting, enemy kills, ship explosion, and music notes. We also have play main music, which plays the main music of the game. It cycles through different music notes based on the current game time and enemy movement time. Then there's the should exit, which is a static method that determines whether the game should exit based on the given event. And check input, it checks the user input events by the user, such as key presses, handling shooting bullets when the spacebar is pressed. Then we have make enemies, which generates the initial configuration of enemy sprites, creates a grid of enemy sprites, and adds them to the enemies group, which each enemy is positioned on the screen based on row and column indices. So now, just to give a quick recap of what we have done, we've now made Space Invaders, the class of Space Invaders. We've also made or coded the methods of the reset, make blockers, create audio, play main music, should exit, check input, and make enemies. So next in line is to make the enemies shoot, which is def make enemies shoot. And within the parameter is just self. And then we'll do an if condition. If parenthesis time get ticks, oops, time get ticks is minus to the self timer, which is less than 700 and the self enemies, which in turn should have enemy, the variable, is equals to the self enemies dot random bottom. And then we'll have self enemy bullets, oops, bullets to add to, once again, the bullet, just like what we did earlier with the left and right bullet. We have the enemy rect x added to 14, comma, enemy rect y, which is added to 20, also 1 and 5. And also included in the parameters, we have the image of the enemy laser and center. And with that, we also have self all sprites dot add, right? Inside is the self enemy bullets And we also have the timer, which is self timer equals to time get ticks. And next, let us calculate the score, which is def calculate underscore score, which has the parameters of self and row. Then we'll have a variable of scores with a bracket, a curly brackets, 0, 2 dots, 30, and comma. And then we'll do the same template up to 5 times. So we have 0 and 30, then 1 and 20, 2 and 20, 3 and 10, and 4, then 10, and then finally for 5, we're going to use a choice. And within the choice is a parenthesis and a bracket of 50, 100, 150, and 300. So basically for this part of the scores, this is the random scores we get when we hit the mystery invader. In this case, Floyd Mayweather. And then we also have the score, which equals the scores, and then a bracket of row. Then a self score, which is plus minus to the score. And then we'll just simply return the score. So now that we have created the methods of make enemies shoot and calculate score, we'll now proceed in creating the main menu, which is def create main menu with this parameter of self. Then we'll create some iterations with self enemy 1. Then we have images, then the image of enemy 3 underscore 1. Below that is self enemy 1 once again. Oops. Then transform scale self enemy 1 comma, then we have 40 by 40, which is the size. Then we'll do this for 4 times. We have, so basically in pairs, pair of enemy 1, enemy 2, enemy 3, and 4. And then below that, we're going to create some self-screen blitz. The self-screen blit. Then we have the self enemy 1 with the size of 318 by 270. And we'll do the same ones for each enemies. Hold on. So we do 2 with the size of 318, 320. And then third enemy has 370. And the fourth enemy, the mystery one, has 299 and 420. Then next, we're going to create some collision checkers. So we have check collision with an S, plural, then self as parameter. Then we have sprite dot group collide, and then a parameter of self bullets, self enemy bullets, true and true. Hold on, I just spelled group. And then we're gonna have, or we're gonna include a for loop, which is for enemy in sprite group collide. And then within it is self enemies, then self bullets, below is true, also true, then dot keys, which in turn should have the self sounds of the invader killed, which has dot play parenthesis. And then we also are going to include self calculate the score and the enemy roll. And next on the list, and next on the list is the collision checker. We have def check collisions, and then parameters of self. Then we have sprite, group, oh, no, group collide. In it, we have self bullet, self enemy bullets. And then we have true and also true. Below that, we have for enemy in sprite group collide with the enemies, then self bullets and true, sorry, true, true, dot keys. After that, we now type in self sounds, oops, self sounds invader killed. Then play. The next we have self calculate score, which has enemy row. Then we have enemy explosion, parameters of enemy, and self explosion, like no, explosion weakness, and the game timer that has time.get ticks. We also have another for loop, which is for mystery in sprite group group collide. Then we have self mystery group, and then a bullet or bullets. And we have true and true again. Then we have keys. And then under that we have mystery dot mystery entered dot stop. Then we also have score self calculate score, which has mystery roll. Below that is the mystery explosion, which has the parameter of mystery score and self explosions group. We also have new shift equals mystery method big M. And we also have self all sprites dot add, which has new shift also with the self mystery group that adds a new shift. We also have for player in sprite group collide, as it includes self player group self enemy bullets and true true dot keys. Then below that we have a new condition, just self life 3 alive means means that we have self life 3 killed. And we also do it the same parts for 2 and 1. 2, 2, 1, and 1. Oh no, forgot. It's supposed to be a list of else's. Then we'll add else, which is game over, which has true. Also start game true. Or no, false. Then we also have the sounds, which is ship explosion dot play. And then we have ship explosion, which has the parameters of player, self dot explosions group, and then below that we have self make new ship, which is true, a self ship timer needs time get ticks, and then a self ship alive, which is false. Hmm. Then we also have an if condition, itself enemy bottom greater than less than, no, less than greater than 540, and with strike group collide of self enemy self player group, and again both being true. And then we have if not self player alive or self enemies bottom is greater or equal than 600, which means self game over to true, game start game being false. Finally, we also have sprite group collide of bullets, all blockers, and both being true again. We also let's just copy this part and then change those with enemy bullets and all blockers. And again, both being true. But if self enemy's bottom bottom is that it has blockers position, which means it has sprite, group collide, enemies, and blockers. All blockers, which is false and true. Now we have finished on making the check collisions or the collision checker. Let us now create the method of create new ship with the parameter of being self create ship and the current time. Now let us create an if condition. Is create ship and current time, which is minus the self ship timer, which is greater than 900, which equates to the self player having shift. And also, pardon about this, all these errors, don't worry, we can fix them. I'm also going to send out a copy of the code, source code of the game. We have self all sprites. It adds the player. Hold on. Then we have the self player root, which adds the player. And then create new ship and make new ship, which is set to false. And then the ship alive is set to true. And next, let's create the game over, which has self, current time, and then two dots. Then we have self screen lit, self background, then set it to 0 and 0. Then we have past, current time, which is minus to the self timer. Then if past is less than 750, then self game over text is drawn with the self screen, or not with the self screen, but in or onto the self screen. And then elif or else if 750 is less than past, but past is less than 1500, and then also self screen blit of self uh, background in the size of 0, 0. So then just copy this part, and then let's do change it to else if 1500 is less than past, but past is less than 2050, then it's subject text draw. But if 250 is less than past, the past is less than 750, then subscreen blit. Yeah. But then if we have a elif or else if of past is less than 3000, And then substring blit and set background 00. And then, wait, no, hold on, not that. We only need the main string, which is set to true. And then, for loop of e in event, get has an if condition, or if itself should exit e, then the system exits. The system exits. And finally, we have reached the final method, which is the main method. In the main method, we have a while loop, is while true, and then inside is an if condition. It says if self main screen, oops, and then a substring blit, and the parameter of so background with zero size. We also have the self title, oops, title text to draw with the screen. We also have also title text, which is 2. We also have self enemy 1 text draw on self screen. Oops. Then let's just simply copy it and do it for 3 more times. So we have 2, 3, 4. And for the final part, we'll just create self create main menu. And then we'll create a for loop, which is e in event get, no, not get, which has an if condition of self should exit e, which equates to system exiting, or if e type equates to the key of, then self all blockers dot sprite group, just a big group, include the self make blockers 0. Not just that, but can also do it for 3 more times. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, and 1. Then we're gonna have a self live loop dot add. Within it is the self live 1 until we reach 3. And then we will do a reset to 0. Self start game set to true. And the main screen set to false. Also, we're also going to create an else if about the self start game, which has if not self enemies and not self explosions loop Then current time, the time get takes, and if condition of current time minus the self gain timer, which is less than 3000, results in the self screen blit of self background and set to 0, 0. Also have self score on text 2, then text font, font size 20, then a string which has self score, color green, 885, and 5. We also have a self score, text which says draw, self screen, so I copy that to 2, then also copy, and just instead of the score text, let's add the next round text, shows on screen, and then also, oops, what's next is the live text. Then we have a check input, and then the current, again, an if statement of current time minus the self gain time, mer, would be more than 3000. We get a self enemy position plus minus enemy move down. Not just that, we also have a self reset, the self score, and the self gain timer plus equals 3000. And then we'll do an else, which has the current time equating to time dot get takes the self play main music, then the current time, then the self stream blit of the background set to 0, then the self all blockers update to the self stream. And then just like earlier, self score text, this one, this, we'll keep it that way for now. They're almost the same, honestly. Just copy paste this part. Both have score text 1 and 2. No round text. They have the check input. We don't have the self enemies update the current time. We have self all sprites update with the keys in the current time. We also have the self explosions loop is the update on the current time. Then it checks the collision. Then create a new shift. Shift with the self. Then new shift at the current time. And finally have self. Make enemies is shoot. And then we'll have a list or else list. Once of self game over. We just have that. This says the current time was the time get fixed, which has the self enemy position, the enemy default position, and the self create um, game over. Here's the current time. Then below that we have display, um, update, then self, oops, sorry, self clock, that's it, for 60. And finally, the final code, if name, oops, name equates to name, then the game, oops, game space invaders verse and game dot me. And with that, we finally coded the game. And just for a quick explanation, so just for a quick explanation, make blockers, the method, it generates and returns a sprite group containing blocker objects. And then the create audio, it initializes the game's audio elements, such as sounds for shooting, enemy kills, ship explosions, and music notes. Then play main music, it plays the main music of the game. It cycles through different music notes based on the current game time and enemy movement. Then click the static method that determines whether the game should exit based on the given event, like quitting or pressing escape. Then check input. It checks for every user input events, such as key presses. Handles shooting bullets when the spacebar is pressed. Then make enemies. It generates the initial configuration of the enemy sprites. It creates a grid for enemy sprites and adds them to the enemies group. Each enemy is positioned on the screen based on the roll and column and dices. Then we have make enemies shoot. For some reason, it's an error. There's no problem in it. So I'm just now. Anyways, so make enemies shoot method. It enables enemies to shoot bullets. It checks if enough time has passed and if there are still enemies on the screen. If conditions are met, it selects a random enemy from the battlefield and makes it shoot a bullet. Then calculate score. This method calculates and updates the player's scores based on the row of the enemy that was destroyed. Different types of enemies yield different scores with some variability for mystery ships. Then we have create main menu. It creates the main menu screen. It displays different types of enemies along with their corresponding scores, providing a visual representation for players to understand the scoring system. Then check collisions. It handles various collision events in the game, such as collision between player bullets and enemy bullets, player bullets and enemies, player bullets and mystery ships, player and enemy bullets, and enemies and player. It also deals with collision between bullets and blockers. Depending on the collision, it triggers corresponding actions like playing sounds, updating scores, creating explosions, and determining game over conditions. Then let's move on to create new ship. It creates a new player ship if the current one is destroyed and a certain amount of time has passed since its destruction. This method ensures that players have a brief delay before a new ship spawns to prevent immediate collisions upon respawn. and then create game over. It manages the game over screen. It displays the game over text and transitions back to the main menu after a certain period, allowing players to restart the game. And finally, the main method, the main game loop. It continuously runs while the game is active. Since while, it says while true, depending on the game state, main screen, start game, or game over, it handles different functionalities like displaying the main menu, starting the game, or managing game over conditions. Within the loop, it updates various game elements, checks for user input, handles collisions, and updates the display at 60 frames per second. And finally, it ensures the proper initialization of the game object, no, initialization of the game object and starts the game loop. And there you have it. With just a little bit of magic, let's erase all the errors. Yeah, that. Then let's just play the game. Control Shift F10, and we now are playing Pacquiao Invaders. And there you have it. That is Space Invaders in the style of Manny, Pac-Man, Pacquiao. I've been referee Urriza of BSIT2B. Thank you. Signing out.